This
community.
meeting is being recorded.
Okay, and I think, Matt, you are our first speaker tonight. So
Oh,
I want
great.
to say how much I appreciate you coming. And we have, I think, a small but mighty group of us here tonight. So
Well, thanks for having me. I'm sorry last month did not work out. I wasn't sure if I was on the agenda or not, and by the time I found out, I was already in kid bedtime mode.
no problem.
Um, so I'll just introduce myself first. I'm Matt Meyer, the president of the Berkeley Federation of Teachers. I am also a parent in the district. I have two kids, a TK student and a second grader at Sylvia Mendez. And I have been president for 7 years. This is coming up on year seven. Hard to believe. And before I was president, I'm fully released. But before I was fully released as president, I teach economics at Berkeley High School. And I also was one of the lead teachers for a very long time at Berkeley International High School, and also was one of the leads on the Universal Ninth Grade program, getting
And,
that instituted back in 2017 and 18. So that's a little bit
and fully
about
released
me.
means that you are full time
It
being
means
president and
that
you don't get to do anything, all the other stuff.
yes, that's right.
Okay.
I do not teach classes right now. I do miss the classroom, but it's a different job and not one that I can imagine doing at the same time that I would be grading papers and lesson planning. Instead, I'm just up to midnight doing other things instead. So I really appreciate you all having me. I just want to say that the PTAs in general are just such an important part of the culture of Berkeley schools. Just not only, I mean, there's like the fundraising aspect, which I know is like a huge hurdle because there's so many great programs that rely on you all, but also just I know what happens at sites, right? Just like the dialogue and conversations and decision making that happens on a site-based level really helps principals and teachers really kind of like integrate all the various stakeholders right into the conversation. So I just wanted to say you all are seen, and the teachers do know about all the work that you all do and really do, depend on that work. We're just very thankful that we have such strong PTAs across the district. I think I reached out to I was like, oh, maybe I should come in. And this is not the first time but I thought that people might want to know what is going on with our contract campaign and the contract and what's in store. And some people want to know like how they can help and what the role of the PTA is and all of those things. So I'll just start off with the lead. And the lead is that we did sign a tentative agreement on Friday uh late at like 10 p.m. It was a long day. Started at 8:30 a.m. and ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the board chambers. But we did sign a tentative agreement, which we are
Congratulations.
very, yeah, very happy about. I think that it is a relief for everyone that the district and the union, which is really just our educators, were able to, after pretty much a year, get a bunch of stuff accomplished. So
That's
it's
fantastic.
this, yeah. So I was gonna just say what that means for everyone because I know I'm speaking in jargon and I have a bad habit of doing that. But basically, why it's called a tentative agreement is because the negotiating team, which is made up for me, I have 30 educators on representing all schools and departments of our district basically have finished the process of negotiating. So we have 15 different changes to the contract that we made. It includes changes to salary and compensation, healthcare. But there's lots of other things like when are report cards due and how do we balance classes? And there's like we cover all kinds of stuff. What's our One thing that we got that we were really happy about is like a staffing ratio for our school psychologists to make sure that our students have basically enough service providers, right? And our BCBAs, which are our behavior specialists, making sure that that we have enough. There's really high needs post-pandemic, especially in our elementary schools. And we also, our school psychologists, this is different from what happened 5 years ago. They don't just like do written reports, but they also provide direct services to students. This is a great example of the district that used to contract out this service, brought this service in. It resulted in saving like $500,000 and being able to hire many more school psychologists that are actually employees of the district. So again, these are just examples of what we do when we negotiate. And there was some other things like when we go to IEP and 504 and SST meetings and they're outside the duty day or clearly outside the duty day, not they like we need to be there, but there's nothing that can force someone to like go to work when it's not your work day, right? It's like you're gonna come to work on Saturday. That had been a long-standing issue. It wasn't that the district was opposed philosophically, right? They understood it, right? But there was no mechanism really to get people paid. And we were able to haggle that out too. We think that will increase attendance at IEP meetings that do happen outside the day. But also we're trying to encourage those meetings to happen during the day as much as possible. So again, these are just, I think that everyone gets wrapped up on like, okay, well, what's the raise and what's the healthcare and all those things. But it's just important to realize like the scope of what we accomplish at the table is just way bigger than kind of what's on like the headline of Berkeley side.
Well,
Um,
and I think, I mean, this is old news maybe, but like for a while there was site subs who could sub in for
Yeah,
a class. Is
those
that is
those were the glory days.
are those gone now?
Yeah, the district paid for those really with pandemic dollars. And we did sign contract language, which was important that sort of talked about how to do that, right? So if they have a credential, what's going to happen? If they don't have a credential, what's going to happen? And we really pushed to have site subs at all the sites. It was completely necessary. I don't know if you all remember, maybe you weren't in the district at the time. Most of you probably were. Um, the extreme staffing shortage of the year after we got back to full-time classes, and even the year after, was having an extreme impact on the ability to teach on a day-to-day basis.
Rita, is that
Um,
Matt?
did I freeze?
I think you
Yeah,
froze a bit there.
Oh yeah, it says my internet connection is unstable, which doesn't make any sense because I pay for very high-speed internet. Come on.
maybe jump back 20 seconds.
So, excuse me. So, I was just saying that the site subs were just so important, right? At the time, the district couldn't continue to fund them. It was just one that had to go as they were making budget savings. Uh, but the other thing, and it has to do with IEPs and 504s and SSTs as well, is that when there were site subs, it was just way easier to have these meetings. The site sub could pop into the classroom and the teacher could go to the meeting. And it's a really good system. I'll just say every school needs them. It's just a shame we can't have them because there's also issues just even on like the classified side of things. Those would be like the instructional assistants and administrative assistants, and there's not always subs for those people either, right? And so these people could step into those roles. It's something to think about for the future. It is
It sort
just
of
so
sounded like
beneficial.
I also sit on, well, this year I'm alternate, but I sit on the SBAC meetings. And it seemed like one of those things that short term sounds expensive, but long term might save money. You know,
Yeah, it did. It did. Given the level of absenteeism that was happening, it was saving money because when teachers give up their prep period to go teach, you're paying them at a much higher rate than you are for the subs. And so it was saving money across the board. When absenteeism went down to a normal level, it didn't quite save as much level. But that was at the
that makes
time.
sense.
Uh Yeah, and we even have issues now. I'm really trying to start some conversations about roving instructional assistants, substitutes that are just assigned to sites. I know the districts what they're going to say about that, but I think in the long run it saves money and it creates a much more efficient system. I have lots of ideas on efficiencies. Um, and I know that some of you have been in SBAC meetings synopsis. Am I frozen again?
You froze for just a minute there. And,
I'm sorry.
I thought maybe the only sort of tangent that I thought maybe I'd ask if you would either tonight or sometime in the future, knowing that teacher perspective is important for those of us that do sit on SBAC. I know that like when you join something like that or you start sitting in on something like that, there's a steep learning curve. But like I kind of wonder, um, is there ways for us as parents to better understand when we're sitting on those meetings the teacher perspective for something like that?
Yeah, I think that one thing is if you all want to invite me to a meeting, one of these meetings, just to talk things over or share perspective, 7:30 is not the worst time. 8:30 is much harder. It's uh I can come and share perspectives. I think that in general, the district and
Oh, Matt, you froze again. That's exactly how I feel when I'm in a spec meeting, like ready to just. I hope we get him back.
okay, I'm back. I'm really sorry. My internet
No,
got
no
cut.
problem.
Maybe that'll help if you
Okay.
turn off your video.
I
Just
did.
saying.
I turned on my video, but it actually like the whole thing just like left, but it's back. I can tell because you all have like you get frozen. You all have like silly faces where you're frozen. I'm like, oh no. What I was saying is I don't know where I got cut off. But and the district see things very similarly, right? We want to keep cuts away from school sites as much as possible, and we're in agreement there, and so in conversations around um what needs to be cut, it's those are not easy conversations, and we're gonna really try to focus on like, well, how can we like save money, where are efficiencies, and how can we reduce those cuts rather than like I'm not gonna come out and say like, well, this needs to go. I'm on the other side. Like we need to save
Yeah.
this and this is why. And I've worked with classified, I was really trying to help the gardening program, um, helping them with their talking points and those kinds of things, just making sure that those are really important, I think, to our community. And we're going to be in that conversation again. It's inevitable when a situation where the state doesn't fully fund public education, and PTAs are going to help, right? Of course, but there's only so much PTAs can do. But really, we all need to be focused on making sure that our schools are fully funded, and they're just not, right? And even right now, as we speak, Newsom has pulled basic $5.6 billion dollars. It's the equivalent of, I think some of you may know this, $909 a student. It's $8 million dollars for our district that is actually owed to schools this year, right? And there's reasons why he's doing it, and I understand, right? But our take, and we're not alone, the school board
Can
associations
you tell
there.
me what those reasons are? Because I felt like I was a bit lost in that. Like, what?
Um, I mean, I'll say that again, this is just me as my
Yeah.
economics hat on. That this is, I think that there are two pressure points. Okay. And hopefully I don't get cut off as I go into my long tangent. The first pressure point is the Trump administration has cut many parts of federal spending, and the state will need to make up parts of that. Now that it's not education, we have successfully fought back against almost every cut to education, and that's really the national unions have really stepped into that space and have been doing all the lawsuits and winning. All the childcare piece and the DEI one, all of them, like we've been fighting, right? And but other parts of the budget, especially healthcare and various other parts of the budget, there's no like it's harder to fight or there isn't you can't quite fight in the same way. So one thing that I think he's doing is he's trying to like find some money to shore up some other parts of the budget, right? That's one piece. So, but we don't want to, no one wants to be pitted against each other, right? And then the other is just nervousness around the AI bubble and if and when it's going to burst. But that one doesn't really stand out because if that was the case, he would take that money and put it in like a rainy day fund for education, which he's going to have to do anyways, because that money is like statutorily like owed to schools. And so we've all been pushing, and I think, where we will be successful, that some, if not all of that money will come back to schools in this current year. And that will help with any budget situation BUSD finds itself in will, anything that comes in July will offset, or even the May revise, which again is jargon. The governor will put out his budget projections in May. January is already there. Then it gets revised in May, and then the legislature and the governor basically haggle over what's going to be real in June. And so usually what happens in June doesn't differ too much from May, right?
Well, and we
Uh,
were just saying right before you started, like this is the time of the pink slip because uh, in March you have to be notified, but we don't actually have a great set of data for what, I mean, like it's the estimate is not as good in January as it is in May, but there's this gap of time when,
That's right. And one thing that just changed, and I know Pauline's explained this as well in our SBAC meetings, but the state law changed that classified staff have to be notified by March 15th. So that didn't used to be the case. And so that's the pressure I think you all are on as PTAs because you do fund a lot of enrichment that is funded by classified workers. And I know that you're under pressure to get your budgets in because of this. And they're gonna give pink slips to anyone on soft money, right? At this point, that happened last year. It was a big shock. It's not the only time it's happened. My members as well, right? And that's
even
and that's
even the
just
last 3 years, I think
yeah,
there's been big pink slipping.
and we were able, at least on the my side, the certificated side, we ended up with a couple less preschool classrooms, but besides that, everyone was able to get off
Yeah,
that list. I know that in classified there were some cuts, but they weren't nearly as many, right, as was
yeah.
originally proposed in March.
And then Di has a question. When is the time, if any, to do advocacy at the state level?
Yeah, so I think that that time will be coming up, right? So I think that these conversations are happening at the state level right now, but I don't like have the mechanism right now at this moment. Maybe, it might be that the unions plan something, or maybe even the whole ed table, that would be the school board association plus the unions plus the superintendents association plan something. But that's why I think people really should sign up to our little email blast that we put out because especially now that our contract campaign hopefully is coming to an end, we still have to ratify our agreement, which the members will get tomorrow, and the voting will open. But we are hoping to just communicate with our families about some of these bigger issues and how they can be involved. Again, it will be happening. I think the biggest pressure will really probably be in May, April, May, and June. And there will be political, it's going to be a political push. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll all end up in Sacramento. Back in 2019, some of you were around.
Yeah.
We got on buses in May. It doesn't hurt the district, just so everybody knows. It is one last day of instruction, but the district's not financially penalized after April. And we all went to Sacramento, and it mattered. I'll just say they squeaked by some really necessary charter school reform that many districts were couldn't say no, couldn't look at their own finances and be able to say yes or no to charter schools as a reason, like, oh, this is going to financially like really hurt us. And now, that law was changed in 2019 that districts can actually say, hey, if we're going to be financially impacted, our current students that we have in our public schools, we can say no. So that was really important. And that was because of that activism that happened in 2019. Like
Well, and
literally
as a
the,
parent, I mean, I took my daughter to that. And as a parent, I'll say that any missed school time was made up for in education in
oh, it
doing
was
that. And
incredible.
going
Yeah,
in
I
to see
remember.
going into the state capitol and things like that. Like that was,
And
yeah.
we had never done that, right? Where we like, I was the one behind the scenes. I think I was vice president at the time, and Kathy, my predecessor, said, "Okay, this is your event." And so, like, just getting those buses, like, and getting the parents and the kids on, it was really amazing in the Capitol. Yeah, definitely a learning experience, especially in May when things are winding down. So I don't know, maybe that happens. I don't know. It would take more than just us, of course, doing something like that, but there is a to answer your question, there's a lot of conversation about what is the best way to influence that process right now because we do want those dollars back in our schools. We do think it will reduce any layoffs potentially that might happen, and we want it to happen in May. So, people do go look for other work, and there are plenty of vacancies all across our area in all kinds of positions. So people will find work. Okay. I don't know. I didn't really um
Does anybody else have other questions for Matt? Like, thank you so much for coming and talking with us tonight. Um, I don't know.
Rita, I had one question. I mean, so Matt, I wanted to just get your perspective on, you know, does BFT have a perspective on where the budget should be trimmed?
so I'll say this. The whole budget picture as you laid out, Scott, in your long email has to do with inputs and outputs.
Right.
Okay. Right. And so whatever inputs you put in are going to control the outputs that you get out. And whatever your assumptions are that go in as and you put it through formulas. And so one of the things that I feel like successfully challenged because we had to produce this like 100-page binder that we presented on Friday was challenging some of those inputs, right?
Hmm.
And I can just give some examples like how are vacancies handled in the budget, right? So vacancies, for example, they're budgeted for. And even in what we call first interim, that is when it's like a check on what you think your spending is going to be. They're still there, even though no one's in that position. Now, sometimes those positions are contracted out. Most of the time, they're not. It just depends on the type of position that it is. But it looks like in terms of your budget, all the way until you close the books and do your unaudited actuals, like basically at the beginning of the next year, that you're like that spending is happening even when it's not happening. And then you figure out, and it turns into ending fund balance later. And so, this is what we had to do. We had to go through and like just analyze, well, look, in every single year, the ending fund balance was higher than the projected ending fund balance. Why is that? Because vacancies, and this is why you have some districts like San Francisco and West Contra Costa, where they have like $100 million of ending fund balance. It's because they have so many vacancies, right? And so
Hmm.
they're not in the adopted budget. It looks like it's spending, right? And so, this is just an example of some of the, and also, and this is kind of what I always in SBAC meetings, tend to challenge too, because I want to reduce that list, right, as much as possible. And the district is just, by their nature, they're just conservative, right, in their analysis. We found money in like a category called books and supplies. It's notorious for where districts kind of like put money sometimes.
Hmm.
And we said, oh, well, books and supplies spending was $3 million every single year. We have all the history. But this year it's $6 million, right? And then
Hmm.
it's like, okay, what does that mean? Are you really doubling your spending on books and supplies? Or, again, these are just examples. And we did have a curriculum adoption, but that's not ongoing, right? You buy those things one time. So it's like, are you using one-time dollars for one-time purchases? Or why are you putting in an ongoing source? So these are just kinds of things. I couldn't tell you what should and sh I think nothing really should be cut. Everything we have is what our students need. I think prioritizing our school sites is the priority, which we need to stick to. I think we all see that the same. It doesn't mean you decimate the district office. There are things that have to happen there. But this is just where the conversation really is. And I don't think at the end of the day, I do think the SBAC process, where we have many meetings and we get to ask lots of questions and get lots of reports back from the district, is a pretty transparent way to make these types of decisions. It isn't just the district being like, well, this is what we think. That's what happens in other districts. I want to be really clear. It's like, okay, well, we got into a room and we just like made a report and this is what we think. So this process was instituted during the Great Recession, really to stop to reduce layoffs. And we were one of the only districts that did not have furloughs or layoffs. And because of a transparent process with really, creative thinkers in the room back in 2010 and 11, we were able to just work our way through that, right? And so we've kept this has been a really great group, right? We've actually made it bigger and there's more stakeholders involved. And I think it also forces the district to do a lot of thinking that they wouldn't necessarily do further in advance. So I appreciate all the parents that are on the SBAC because they're bringing up all their experiences, right, from their school sites. And also, sometimes they're willing to say things that I can't say. So it's just really helpful and it does create a level of transparency. And at the end of the day, the district will make a recommendation and SBAC will have a recommendation as well. And I think that's what's important for the board to know is like, okay, well, here's what the superintendent thinks, and here's what this group of people who's been delving deep into these things also think. So I can't answer the question like what should or shouldn't be cut. We just have our values and that's what we're going to operate from. And we'll try to find savings as much as we can. And so,
Well, thank you
Okay,
so much for
thanks.
coming tonight.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
really appreciated.
Okay. It's bedtime, everybody. I'll see you all later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we had a couple people join after he started presenting for everybody. Much appreciated for coming tonight. And I think we have our next speaker who is Joya, I think it's Joya Balk. She's the new director of I guess it says categorical programs and special projects, but for us, I think it translates to after school. And so it's really great to have her with us this evening. I know she was doing a late pickup for a kid, so I don't know if she's able to jump in right now.
I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. You're back home. Great.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm ready. I am ready, but I'm also glad I got to hear Matt. That was super informative. Thanks for having me, everybody. I'm Joya, and I am first and foremost a parent. I have a second grader and a fifth grader in public schools. I'm in San Francisco, so not benefiting from Berkeley yet, but my fifth grader did say she wants to come to middle school over there. So you guys are a phenomenal district. I just started in November, and I've learned so much, and I feel so grateful for the real lived values that I've learned at each of our school sites, and that's one of the reasons that I came over. Was really the belief in the mission and the ability to be creative in the midst of these constraints that we have. And so, yeah, I'm really, really thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. I see Lily on, who has been part of the PTA collaborative, but other than that, everyone else is new. So, I'm glad to meet you all, expand the circle. I was prepared to talk about where we are with our after school programming.
I think that would be really great if you don't mind giving us that snapshot.
Great. And in addition, I'm also responsible for all of the programs that are funded outside of the general fund. So as you guys were asking Matt about some like key ways to advocate, I do think we can continue our partnership because it's really interesting the way that Berkeley has limited title funds given our demographics, but the way that we use them can be very flexible and innovative. And so I'd love to come back to talk more about that. If there's a time that makes sense, if, to talk about Title I, which is our, supporting our low socioeconomic and unduplicated pupils, our Title III, which is our multilingual learners. We have Title IV, which is about extended learning resources, and then Title II, which is our professional development. Okay. Would you be okay if I shared the screen, and I can drop the link in the chat too? I'm more than happy to share with you all too. Is that
Yes.
okay?
You have the ability to share, so please go for it.
Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, so really excited to just be official with this campaign. The Engage Expanded Learning is the opportunity to listen intently from our school sites and the people that are most impacted by our after-school programming, which are students and families. We've heard a little bit, and again, I'm very new and I've already heard a little bit, but the idea behind this campaign is to have a larger swath of voices informing the next steps moving forward. And so I'm gonna just present a couple things that I've heard, and I'd love your feedback on like, does this align with what you're hearing too? And then we can revise as we go, because this hasn't been shared publicly yet, so the timing's perfect. Okay. So just a quick overview. Obviously, we're grounding in our mission and vision. I do want to share with you the plan right now for stakeholder voice, get your feedback on that. I will not go into the strategic arc or the timeline because I'll give you those slides and you guys can look at it on your own. But I think for the benefit of our time together, I'd like your feedback on that, like deeply on the first two rather than trying to go through everything. Like I said, the mission is what called me to come to Berkeley. I think you live it every day. We start with this mission statement through everything, and you all started with your PTA mission statement as we started the meeting today. And because we have clarity around this, we're able to actually make sure that our programs live up to this. And the Learns program in particular has a mission statement too. So does our Bears program. But for the sake of the work right now, we're going to be really focusing on taking improvement actions towards our Learns program first and foremost. And then if this process works, we can go into our Bears programming, but the staff is different, the ratios are different, the intent of the programming is different. And so we really were intentional about chunking it out first. The mission statement here highlights 3 specific things. The programming should be about academic support, recreational activities, and enrichment classes. And so we're going to try to dig into that and see like, what does that look like across each of the campuses and where is excellence happening and how do we make sure we scale that excellence? But we need your voice on this because this is a comprehensive mission statement and like we could spend 10 years trying to make this better. So this is really where we want your voice to help us pinpoint what is the most important thing to fix now. So before taking action, I was able to look backwards before looking forwards. And so these are just screenshots from the work you all did last year. I know Jill Hogendijk was crucial in helping a couple people that had been in my position because it was a little bit transient over a couple years. And so she did brief me on the intentionality behind the vision of extended learning, which is here on the left, the work that she did with partners. And so I circled the one with the city of Berkeley because that's still going very strong. And we meet bi-weekly with the city of Berkeley to align on our programming and become more intentional about ensuring we are serving every family that wants it. And then really thinking about what does that look like for these 3 key areas of improvement, which is communication, space, and staffing. So don't need to go specifically into all of that, but I just want you to know, like, I'm building on what had been done before. I'm not starting something new. And these are the known concerns that I've heard, thanks to the PTA Collaborative for synthesizing it so well. So I'm going to ask for your feedback on this first. So as I read the 6 of them, I'm going to ask you to put in the chat on a scale from 1 to 10, how much this aligns with what you're hearing from your sites. So 1, like, no, this does not align at all, are like 10, yep, this is exactly the things that I'm hearing from my site. How do these 6 concerns align with your perspective and experience? Communication breakdown is a primary stressor. Demand for care exceeds available on-site capacity. Staffing instability directly affects safety and quality. Families see untapped financial capacity. Lack of a visible forward-looking plan. And many disjointed parts, no cohesive plan yet.
I'm not sure we got people writing into the chat for that, but all of that. Sorry.
That's good. I see yes to Craigmont. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and we can even get off chat off of mute now because it is such a small group. Like, yeah, I'm glad to hear Rita say all of it. I see, this is like definitely a pause point because I want to make sure this is resonating. Otherwise, we shouldn't anchor in on it. We should keep listening. Craigmont, Rosa Parks. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay.
The only thing I would say okay, and I have a middle schooler and I have an elementary school kid.
Nice.
Middle school, markedly different.
Ah.
So I will say, and I don't know if this is universal, but my experience with, and what after school is in middle school is radically different too, right? Like it's a couple of, I think, clubs and then lots and lots of sports. And I will say that there isn't the same issues around not having spots or not. I mean, I think there's some after school classes that have happened that it's like, oh, and that's full now. But many things are available. And so it's not the same limited capacity issue. And I don't know, other people speak up here too, because that's just my
I would agree with you, Rita. So I'm over at Longfellow, and the anxiety of getting my middle schooler, particularly in 6th grade, was not there. We knew he could get into the Learns program. And granted, as he gets older, he's able to walk to the library or whatnot. So I think a lot of the stressors, I feel from the last 2 years have been elementary school and TKers particularly, as the early Wednesdays are horrible for parents. And they're little people who just they need the buses and all of that. It's just really tough. So I believe particularly for the little kids, staying on site is a huge issue that parents want to know. I dare say they prefer for them to stay on campus than to be bussed around. If I could, from my experience and others talking to them, that's a preference.
Thank you. I appreciate all of that.
Ditto for Willard.
This is great. So we have all 3 middle schools represented. Okay. And I really hear that idea of like, how do we differentiate that experience? Okay.
I was going to add that makes sense. In our previous meetings, we've been talking about a developmental arc and recognizing that TK kindergarten, the youngest kids have the most trouble finding other kinds of programs. And as they get older, it becomes less of a prep. But yeah, elementary school, it's like really needed. Yeah.
Well, and that's because of the ratio change, right? Like in middle school, I think it's, I don't know,
Ratio change
for 40 kids or something. And
right. And just developmentally,
absolutely,
schoolers are able to walk home by themselves, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even if they're too far away to walk home, like it's still not the same care issue. But it's interesting that by the time you hit middle school, it's like, come everyone, join whatever activity after school. Whereas in elementary school, it's like, okay, everybody out unless you're unless you made it into the program, go. Right. So I think that's part of it too, of like, it's really interesting the culture shift when you hit middle school.
That is, and this is the first time I really heard about that distinct messaging. And so I'm wondering, like that messaging, whether it's intentional or not, has an impact, right? Around like that sense of culture. So, okay. So differentiate the questions to make sure we can disaggregate by grade span, and then also make sure that I dig in with the team a little bit more about like, what's this culture shift and
maybe even relabeling the problem area, because I don't think I've heard from anyone an issue with middle school. I don't know about high school yet. Is Berkeley High represented tonight? I don't think so. But like I have not, I mean, again, I think this is largely an elementary issue, not a middle and high school issue.
That's great. And
Yeah.
again, zeroing in on what is it that we really want to target for change is so helpful because with limited resources, it'll be a deeper impact of a change if we have a smaller target. So I love this. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And I see in the chat the idea of like the timing of communication is something that I've heard before. So I'm glad that I see this repeated again in the chat that was really a problem. And so that's definitely something that I feel like we want to work on this year.
If I can interject about the communication and timing, I particularly feel horrible for the TKers and kindergarten families who don't know how to jock for a position at City of Berkeley programs, who 2 weeks before school don't know what they're going to do with their kid. Those families particularly are just so lost because in some of the Facebook groups or just chatting like, what do I do with my child? I had them in preschool all day and now they're out at 2. I don't even know where to start. So definitely the newcomers to the district too need a little more guidance and maybe earlier communications.
And that's the first time again that I'm thinking about maybe we do partner around an office hours or something. If we can't necessarily answer everything on the timeline, can we at least have a space where there's shared resources? Because you all are going to be stronger resources for each other even than I could be. So, okay, I'm taking that as a note too of like, how do we make sure that there's consistent space for resource share, even if we're not the solution at that point?
Because the TKers, mind you, they haven't built community, or kindergartens haven't built community with other parents. Again, as they get older, maybe parents are potting and they share information, but definitely the younger community just have not connected.
And I would just like to jump in. I've made this point in many different ways, but we've considered the developmental arc, but that's a really good point about the families of younger kids. So possibly continuing to look at really prioritizing, placing those youngest kids. And then one thing that I just want to point out, like we made this list, but like to me, demand for care exceeds available on-site capacity. I think people would settle for last-minute communication if they knew they were all going to get a spot, like in middle school. Nobody'd be worried about it. So I'd trade, or I would have traded an August 13th yes with a July firm no. So that's really, I think, the priority, but I know it's not totally doable. That communication is a little more in the control of you all. So
I appreciate that point, Lily, because it's helping me think too. I'm already thinking about how to edit their survey again. But like, on a continuum, if you can say like on a sliding scale, which one has a higher priority for you of these 6, that might help us too, because again, we don't have control about everything, but what we do have is like a very robust, connected parent group here who can really help us communicate out and augment that. And so I just think again, it's like knowing what's the priority, because we can't do everything, but if we can do the couple things really well, that makes a big difference, then next year will be so much better.
Well, and it could be something too of saying like, I mean, I guess it's thinking like, what would the ideal be? The ideal would be that you find out what school your kid gets into when they start. And, here are options for after school. You will be notified by this day if you get into the on-site one. And if you don't, here are City of Berkeley and maybe 1 or 2 other backup plans. Like what different of a welcome that would be to new parents to be like, hey, we'd love to have everyone. And we know that we can't, but if we'll notify you by, I don't know, May, June, whatever. And that you'll still have 6 weeks, a month, whatever, to get something sorted for your child. And so sort of thinking backward from like that as the goal, working in conjunction with those notification letters so that the message that parents get is not just, hey, your kid got into this school, yay. It's also, this whole, like, it's not just school. We know you're also interested in the rest.
Okay, that's a perfect segue. I see a yes in the chat too, so I love that. But that's a perfect segue to say, like, what's the vision? Okay, did I just cut someone off? I heard someone.
Oh no, I cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I no longer have an elementary school student. I have an eighth grader at Longfellow. And but this recently came up for with I don't remember what space I was in, but it was about busing. And my son, when he was in elementary, went to Cragmont. And there used to be a late bus that went from Cragmont down to the original Longfellow. And a Learns person from Cragmont met the bus at Longfellow, and the parents were able to pick up their students from there. And anyway, someone recently said that they also had an equity issue at their location because there is not a bus that would, transport students from their location, their school. I can't remember which one it was. May have been John Muir. I can't remember. But so I know that there's, that was before the pandemic. That was what happened. And I know that it definitely makes it an equitable issue, because even if you do get a space, if you're not able to get up to Cragmont by, I don't know, Di, do you know what time Learns goes at Cragmont or the other locations? I don't know if it's 5 now, 5:30. Someone told me it was earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Longfellow is 6, but but it's very hard for people to get there. So that's something to really think about, and not just, you know what I mean? Because if we're saying we want everything to be equitable, and I mean, I know the spaces also now are a massive issue, where I guess in the past they weren't as much. But anyway, said my 2 cents. It was just because someone else brought it up to me, and I was like, okay, so it wasn't just Cragmont.
That brings up an interesting point too. Like, another thing that I knew happened before pandemic that stopped, and maybe this is a space issue completely, I don't really know, but before pandemic, I knew parents whose kid went to one school and then bused to a different after school. So say they went to BAM and would get on a bus and take the bus to Thousand Oaks for their after school program.
Well,
And I know we do not have space like that anymore, but it's sort of an interesting way to think about, like, there was, oh, sorry, my son's and his dad are playing games in the next room. Anyway, but like, there might be, again, this concept of busing kids to an after school program is not novel, right? So the idea that the city is busing kids to that the BUSD buses are busing kids to city programming, also not novel. As a matter of fact, when I first started with the district, one of the offers made by the bus system was like, we'll bus kids anywhere. Like, if they're in a private after school program, we'll take them there if it's more than 1.5 miles away from the school. And I don't think they've had the capacity that for a long time either. And again, I know it's all funding, but like, it is sort of interesting to see how quickly things have changed.
Well, I did bring that up when I was in middle school. I mean, not middle school, elementary. It's been a few years, but about that. And I was told by I can't remember who it was at the time, who was over Learns or whatever, or Learns and Bears, that was offered to parents. And I just didn't know. It became kind of, it wasn't a pleasant conversation. So I backed off because it wasn't an issue for me. But just looking at the broader thing, if we really want to do our four E's, or we really want to live up to our mission statement, it has to be more than just words. We have to do action. And if we really want our programs to not, and this was brought up to me, I have no idea if it's true or not, that a lot of these programs also kind of are segregated. So it's, you know what I mean? Like, one group is in bears and another group is in learns or social economics. And I just think that we really need to kind of think about that too.
That is one thing that I know that BAM addressed. And so the kids have no idea who's in bears and who's in learns. I don't know how they did it. I mean, I know that that was one thing they put a lot of effort into at BAM. And I don't know what happens at other schools, but I know that at our school, no one would actually, like, kids and parents, sorry, wouldn't know. But I don't,
Again, that was something that someone told me.
Mm.
I can't say that I've experienced it, but then again, I'm kind of maybe the unicorn because,
Well, and I'll say too,
I live in the hills and my kid could walk.
Right. Well, and I'll say too, like BAM also does PTA enrichment classes. And when my kid did after school, and again, this is pre-pandemic, if your kid was enrolled full time in Learns, they got two included enrichment classes a week. So they weren't just doing, right? And so, the people who were paying just for enrichment classes actually paid more than needed as a means of saying that every kid in Bears or Learns also got 2 enrichment classes a week. If your kid was at 3 days a week in Bears or Learns, they got 1 free after school, and then you could also pay to have your kid in an enrichment class. So it was like another sort of system within the system. But I know that was something that they spent a lot of effort on trying to do and felt very strongly about, and then was completely dashed by the pandemic. And now they're just starting to sort of build it back up again. This is the first year back that they've had enrichment classes both semesters. So the incorporation, I think there are scholarships, but it's not that same every kid gets to kind of thing. So
this is so informative. So I'm super grateful for the conversation because it's making me hear different concrete things that had happened that are falling into these buckets. And I think what you just talked about, the last piece around enrichment and the experience, is perfect for a focus group because we can ask parents who had participated before the pandemic to help us better understand like what was there as we think about this third bucket that's on the bottom, which says quality academic programming.
I will say that like the current state of doing the PTA enrichment classes is, and this is like just my sense, is like, can we just build up Bears and Learns to be good? Like instead of trying to have enrichment. Heather, I see your hand up too. I'm sorry about that. I didn't notice it right away.
No, that's okay. It just went up. I just on this thread, we've actually had some really recent conversations with our PTA at Rosa Parks about clubs, which is essentially what you're describing as like enrichment classes. And we were running into all the barriers of like, well, we can't like run a small business from our PTA and like hire staff, and like the burden of managing that would be too much.
And yet
so we're kind
schools are trying to do that. Some schools do basically that. Like they have volunteer coordinator positions who have to be on site 5 days a week from, I think it's after school until the enrichment classes are over. So like, and then they do pay the enrichment class teachers, right? And so it's like running a small business. Like it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking. And I think our PTA has come to the conclusion that it's just like too much for us to manage with the volunteers that we have available. But there is a huge interest in that, and there's an interest in the PTA sponsoring that, and maybe there's a way to collaborate with Learns, or can Learns just be better, but Learns isn't accessible to all the kids, that only is accessible to some of the kids. And so how do you make it equitable so everyone can get access? So we're having a version of this conversation. I would love to see a way that it could actually come to fruition, and potentially with some sponsorship of the PTA without having to take on the full burden of the administration of a program.
And I think that's the flip side of what my sense is at BAM, which is they've been doing it. It's an extra job, like a full, like doing the contracts and submitting them and all of that. Like it's a job, an unpaid but very intense job. And the other unfortunate piece of that, my understanding is, it's very hard to delegate. So you can't break that job between 4 people And so instead, it's like that trying to break it up has not been successful. So, you know, I think there's a sense of like, how can we have this not be something? And again, I think also many that don't get into Learns take enrichment to fill the gap. 100%. No, 100%. Yes, agreed. And it feels, from my sense of witnessing it, is that year to year, there's more and more hoops of fire to jump through to set these things up, making it more and more of a challenge to run an enrichment after school, in addition to Bears and Learns that are already happening. And again, I'm not sure, not all teachers feel great about having their classrooms used by these programs. Not all, you know, it's another level of coordination being done on campus, right? And so, yeah.
Thank you. This is super helpful. So these are the 4 buckets that I think we're going to try to set goals in. Again, I want to have a better sense from you all, like, does this land right? But I think first and foremost is what we're saying on the top left, which is we are trying to maximize as many on-site seats as possible. And that's what we're doing right now. We are looking at the budget we are looking at the staffing right now, and we are looking at ways to maximize as many seats on site as possible. That's the partnership with the city of Berkeley as well, because we have data working with them too about maybe it cannot be BUSD staff, but can the city of Berkeley run their programs on our site so that we don't have to transport the littlest of kids, right? And so we're definitely looking in the top left corner right now to think about what we can do better. I have 3 other goals on here too, but I see Lindsay's hand. You want to jump in, Lindsay?
Yes. So I managed the PTA enrichment program at Craigmont for 3 years. And it was, I mean, it's a nightmare of a job. And one thing that was successful though, going along the thread that people were trying to like lift up, was like that flipping the model. And so we had a Learns coordinator who was willing to like pilot programs that basically the PTA worked to pay for, and then she filled with Learns students. So we helped her find the vendors and managed that process of like paying them, but she was able to use the vendors and fill the seats. And so that was pretty successful. But what if like Learns filled half the seats and we kept the other half of the seats open to the general school population who didn't get into an after school program or just want the ease of not having to shuttle their kids across town, you know, for sometimes I do it for 3 hours straight, just FYI. So like that kind of gift is really helpful. And what we noticed was that after 3rd grade, those seats don't fill up as much for the enrichment classes because the kids have different voice and choice kind of like rises. And so if you concentrated the offerings from TK to 3rd grade, then you know they're very, very popular. So yeah, anything we can do to flip that model of like what was happening now, because it's not sustainable for most places. It was a full-time job on top of my full-time job on top of parenting. It's a lot to ask of anybody.
That's so helpful because that then translates into this idea of operational excellence as well. And so, like, what parts do parents have to do because you're a unique, community at your specific school site and you have direct access to the PTA funds as well as the parent population? But what part can the district do? Because maybe there is something consistent that would take something off the plate if we operationalized an MOU process or a facilities rental process or made something that was more streamlined. So that's really making me think too about like how do all 4 of these goals work in tandem with one another, so that we can reap that benefit because that's crazy amount of time. Thanks for bringing details to the comment that you added in the chat. I definitely appreciate that. And I'm hearing again another plug for that, the differentiated program based on grade levels. And so really thinking about the younger grades maybe is a reframe around this vision of, at least for this first year. Okay, I'm going to keep going because I know that you guys have other things on your agenda, but this slide just talks about what is the campaign, and it's really an intentional space to listen deeply and have iterative prototypes and feedback loops. So that's why I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the time and space and your partnership. Um, because it's hopefully moving to this place of shared ownership and transparency. And that's with all the levels of the system. It's like really starting with the Learn staff so that they feel that shared ownership of living that vision as well, and that they can help interface with you, the families at the school sites, in a way that's consistent across any school, regardless of what program you're in. So in order to do that, we have a couple of resources. So I have one column that's asking your feedback as the PTA Council. I have 3 links here. Hopefully you can access all of them. But really wanted to get your eyes on like this one pager to explain to families what is the Engage Expanded Learning campaign. There is a survey link here, and it's the same survey, but if you are enrolled in a BUSD program, it leads you down one path of questions. But if you say, no, I am not enrolled in the BUSD program, it will lead you down another path of questions. And so definitely want everybody's feedback on this survey so that we're capturing everybody's experience and needs. And then there's an interest form if there's parents that would want to participate in a focus group, which would just be, a larger investment of your time. But hopefully going deeper, and maybe one of the themes could be this idea of like, how are we getting different models of the enrichment program back on campuses? And then on the right, I'm asking for your advocacy. Again, like, you know better than I do, but a couple thoughts off the top was like including this messaging in any of the communication structures you already use. Following up with the class and the school that you represent because you have those relationships. And then really the idea here is like most of our families that fall into our unduplicated pupil category do benefit from strategic outreach. And so really thinking about like who is at your school that could use an additional phone call or an additional email, or maybe it's the Learns coordinator standing after school reaching out to the families that don't necessarily, sit on their phone all the time on a survey. And so those are kind of the things off the top of my head. And we can spend as much or a little time on this as works for you all tonight. But I would really love that you're thinking on this before we start to launch this survey publicly, which our plan is to launch on March 2nd.
Joya, I'd love to include as much of this as you want in our minutes that I will send out next week.
Okay.
So, if you don't want this to go out till after March, I don't know if you can give me a edited version of what you do want to go out today, because I think it's valuable for our folks to see some of this.
Yeah. And when you say send your minutes, is it just the folks that are like on the PTA council, or would it be to everybody in the
everyone on the listserv?
Yeah.
So folks who can't come to this meeting but want to know what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do think maybe the people who are here and are able to like hear this and spend more time on the feedback part should get the link. And then I'll give you one without the detailed links until March 2nd.
Yes. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Dre, I see your hand.
Hi, this is Diana Mullins. I was going to say that one of the advocacy things that we talked about, Joya, that I don't see really called out here too much, but I want to say is if not just die through the PTA newsletter, but if each of our individual PTAs can get this survey out, talk to the OFI reps, get it out to in their newsletters, and just trying to get it even through the principals as well. So I think, if we can get it out to as many people as quickly as we can, I think that'll be great.
Yeah, thanks for saying that specifically. I'm putting that in my notes too. Okay, well, I'm gonna definitely click on, I'm a visual learner, so I'm gonna click on this real quick so you can see it's just a Google form. But if you scroll down, and you look at some questions and you're like, nope, this would really be a trigger, like please reword it. I can be accessed via email and or on a phone call if it's easier to talk it through. I would love to get your feedback if you had time over the next week to kind of help us edit it, because we want to make sure that that when people do spend time looking at a survey and giving us their input, it feels like it's aligned with the way that they're experiencing the program. So again, it's just a Google survey. There are 7 sections because it will bifurcate depending on the answer on that first page. If you say you're not enrolled, then it'll go to this section around what would you hope for the future. And if you say you are enrolled, you get a lot more questions around the quality of the program. So we can understand, like, how is it landing for you and your family? What parts of the programming are working? What parts of the program need development? Okay, that's all I had. Was there anything else you were hoping for me to share tonight?
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like that was a lot of, I really appreciate all the conversation here. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed how we'll get the most recent example of the survey, and how should we give you our feedback if we want to talk about it? Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put the link in right now, Lily. But in the document I share with Di, I'll have all of that in there. And then if you just reach out via email, we can find a time to chat, or you could just email me your feedback. I'm gonna just put the link in the chat here too, so you all have that directly.
Is the intent to incorporate some of this feedback into this upcoming fall enrollment session?
Absolutely, yeah. My hope is that we're going to be doing this survey from March 2nd to March 20th, and then we'll have concrete data that we can use as we reset our enrollment cycle in terms of the number of seats, in terms of the staff, in the way that we're aligning staff, and then in terms of obviously our communication commitments to make sure that we are taking that feedback into account and we have a better communication plan around the timing and the consistency.
Joya, we would love to have you back, like say maybe May. I mean, our biggest participation in our meeting was last September when we talked about Learns, and then we had like over 50 participants on this call because it was on everyone's minds. I think they would love to end the school year knowing what the fall will look like. So I'll reach out for possible May, come back to let us know your plan. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Except one thing to think about is that is Memorial Day. So
we'll figure out the logistics.
We'll have to figure out another, yeah.
Great. Well, I am flexible. Again, as the mom hat comes on and the staff hat comes off, I absolutely think that the work that we're doing won't be successful unless we're in alignment together. And so whatever you need from me, just let me know. And I will absolutely reach out to you as this gets to be iterated on in the next 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna jump off and then I will send you some resources because I have Rita and Di's your emails, but feel free to share that with anybody else that was on the call tonight.
I am just pulling our agenda back up, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay, I think we were going to talk a little bit about SBAC next, but I'm aware that it's 8:46, and so maybe we can talk quickly first. We got emails about nominating committees. So everyone, it's time to start putting together a nominating committee for your PTAs for next year. For PTA council next year, we need a new treasurer. If we don't have a treasurer, there is no more PTA council because all 3 of these positions need to be filled. So send them our way. All of these positions are 2-year positions. In Mandisa, this was her 2nd year. So we need, somebody else is going to have to step in for that. And then, maybe now we can sort of flip back here. Is there other things to talk about with the budget updates? Scott, are you still on the call? Is there how?
Yep, still here. I tried to be pretty comprehensive in the email.
Oh yeah. So I know now that SBAC is on, Oh, kids are melting down. And okay. Thank you for stepping in, Lily. Much appreciated. I'm able to attend SBAC now that it's on Wednesdays again. So we'll see how long that goes. But last week was really just a very sort of summary of, again, like there's cuts and look at all these grants that are ending. And no, we can't get new grants again because they don't work that way. So
Is it going to be more does it meet? It doesn't meet weekly, does it?
it was last week and this week, and then we have a break, I think, but it really varies. Last year we started in October, so
Wow.
I'm just glad that it didn't start in October. So even if it's more frequent, because honestly, when it started in October, it was like, we don't know anything. Let's talk about how crappy the outlook is. Don't write crappy. Sorry.
I won't write it.
I mean, one interesting thing from the SBAC meeting is that they're going to do a board study session on special education spending, and they're going to have that one be accessible virtually as well, because they're hoping to have DSEEK and other advisory committees join in the listening of that and make it more easily accessible, because they're not going to be able to bring that information to committees. It's too much. So they're hoping that by making it virtual as well as in person, that they'll be able to capture more people that way. So I was grateful to hear that, because Scott staying for that budget workshop was gold. So thank you, Scott, for your community service.
Absolutely. So do we have any dates around that?
Of course not. Of course not.
Okay.
I have a general question. Are folks, we went through last year with all the pink slip and everyone was, really upset. Now that we're in year 2 or probably more years than that, is there a feel that folks are like, oh my God, we're going through this again, or this is just par for the course? Because if anything, that was one of the bare minimum lessons I wanted folks to learn, is this is just how it is.
Well, or it's how it is with budget cuts, because I think 3 years ago,
with the surplus,
we'd had enough. It was that we weren't having these issues, right? That there wasn't necessarily conversations around pink slipping and people stressing them in the same way. Maybe there were a few pink slips that went out, but not like the last 3 years.
Well, to what Matt just said though, because of the new law for classified staff, money, you're going to get it. So it's horrible to be a classified staff and know you're going to get a pink slip, and that's how you live for your work. But it's kind of out of our control.
It is, and I think, I don't know, it helped me to hear that I think people like Jill Hogendijk also get pink slipped. Like, apparently this is just how we run our system.
I mean, if we look at what's happening in other districts, like West Contra Costa is cutting 10% of their workforce. Oakland Unified is cutting like tons of central staff and is looking now at school staff. I mean, there are cuts happening in every district, and they're seeming to be brutal, and they have not been able to keep it from touching student experience. So know that that's true, but also know that the number of staff in schools has increased while enrollment has declined overall in our area. So I'm not trying to like make a story or have any type of perspective. I'm just giving information from EdSource and CalMatters.
I'm not going to try and make a story either, but one of the things that I think about when Lindsay, at your suggestion several years ago, I talked to the principal at Ruth Actie, and because you had said she's got the best achievement gap of the elementary schools. And she said part of why that is that they are not doing extra art, extra garden, extra, or maybe they do garden, but like she's not, her Prop 28 money goes for dance class, which works as both performing arts and PE, right? Like there are, and she believes that in part that's, what that focus allows her to have a better achievement gap in part. So like maybe it's thinking about some of the wonderful extra things that happen at some of our schools and thinking about like, is this necessary? Is this the best use of money? Is this I don't know, in a time when we have to make cuts, thinking, well, what would make a cut that might benefit our learning gap between students as opposed to making it worse?
I mean, it's not as simple as that, I think,
No,
unfortunately. But like, I do think that if we continue bringing the learnings of our literacy improvement in elementary school to other subjects and to other grades, then and to bring our multi-tiered system of support in, which is like evidence-based instruction, early diagnosis of like where the gaps are, and then intervention time to like address those gaps, which is basically repetitions to mastery, not necessarily a new way to teach or a new program, then like we can all be Ruth Actie. I mean, at Piedmont, 18% of kids with disabilities are on grade level with reading. At Ruth Actie, it's 50% and 70% for math. I mean, like nobody ever wants to make the comparisons from school site to school site because nobody wants to put anybody on flag. But at the same time, like if we just ignore our silos of excellence and don't learn from them in fear that they'll be told to stop what they're doing, then we're missing opportunities to improve outcomes for all students. If it makes you feel better, Rita, BAM is also on the top of the list every year.
I know our principal was saying that he's following their lead. Like that's how he thinks about it. It's like, I'm learning, I am trying to learn from what other schools are doing. And so that's his perspective, which is cool. But again, yeah, like I don't know.
I think it's all about doing what's working and stopping what's not working, even if it makes us feel good or the intent is there. If it's not effective, then why would we put the time and energy into it? And the time is money and time is opportunity for our students.
Well, exactly. And investing money into it. Yeah.
Right. Because if we don't intervene at the earliest grades with the correct, like, I don't know, prescription isn't the right word, but the correct intervention that's like accelerating learning, then it's more time later because the brain becomes less plastic. We've missed some of those ideal windows. It's not a sentence for any kid, but it is much harder. I made a joke the other day that like tutoring, if you catch dyslexia and you want to privately tutor your kid, if you catch that in first grade, that's like a 10 or 15K bill. If you catch it in fourth grade, you're buying a Lexus in tutoring. So, I mean, like,
totally.
It's so many hours, it's impossible to catch up.
Early intervention's a thing, late intervention's not a thing.
Yeah.
Which always makes me wonder why in our school district we have language classes at middle and offered in middle school and then standard in high school when the window of learning for that closes at 12. Why do they do that? Anyway.
Speaking of, we have 5 more minutes. Just segue. Any feedback about the math curriculum public session? That was our next agenda item. Anyone here can speak of that? How did it go?
I mean, I definitely went. I don't know if anybody else is on the call who went. Probably not, since there's only 7 of us. Maybe. But anyway, it was typical of the info sessions where, there's a slide deck to get through and then they separate us on pads of paper around the room to capture notes. And I'm still not sure what the rubric is because the CARE acronym is very vague. And so I think that we'll just have to see. They promised that we would get the information on what the short list of curriculum are that they plan to pilot before they pilot it. And we'll get a chance to review those options as a community and provide input on them. So that would be the next step, is for them to make a short list of options to pilot next year.
Thanks for that, Lindsay. Thanks for attending too. The last few, we have 3 more minutes. Update on cell phone policy. I think we followed up with Jennifer Shanowski about this. And, I think from our last meeting, someone had commented that, King had actually had a policy that they had implemented a year ago. And I think someone had commented Longfellow that principal or the school did not know that they were supposed to implement it. And then I think Jennifer came back and said that was the next step, was the board was supposed to come back with very clearer guidance to the middle schools about how to implement. And I think that's where we left off. That sound right, Rita?
Right.
Or Scott?
I don't think there's been any movement.
So maybe we should follow up with her about that.
I was gonna follow up directly with Yasmina and copy Jennifer, because I think Yasmina is the one at the district level who's actually holding this.
Oh, if you don't mind, Scott, if you can leave that and loop us in and we can get out.
Yep.
That'd be lovely. Thank you so much.
Okay, will do.
Well, I think we've come to the end of our time at 8:59. Oh, nope, there it is, 9 o'clock. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Very much appreciated.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
And I love to end it. Thank you all for your hard work. We so appreciate you. You never get enough appreciation. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
I was going to say the same thing for you two, or for the BPTA board.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.